What's one of the most rewarding experiences as a DM? It's having players give to you and the story you're building. And to do that, you gotta have to give to them first. That's why today we're answering the question of how do you engage your players on this episode of the Vanguard Chronicles. Welcome, everyone, to the Vanguard Chronicles podcast, where we have an ongoing conversation into the creative process behind the Vanguard, our monthly crowdsourced D&D campaign of interconnected one-shots. I'm one of the hosts and Dungeon Masters of the Vanguard, Nathan, also known as Spark Ascendant, and I'm joined as always by my co-host and fellow Vanguard DM, also known as General Grom. How's it going, General?
That's going well. So close this time. You're getting there. It's so much fun to watch you guys do these.
Yeah, and I get one word that trips me up like every time. But much like D&D, we roll with it and we just let them keep going.
Yeah, you have to roll with it. That's the fun part.
So, I really want to get us going because this is a huge episode to talk about. Honestly, we might revisit this topic, but first and foremost, if anyone has not listened to, I want to do a quick plug to our most recent episode 6, entitled Lose Episode. Although we try to make it so that you don't need to listen to all of our episodes in order. We all spoke between Ryan, our producer, who, fun fact, is on that episode, and Shawn and I discussed it, and we just find the story in that episode so personal that we really encourage you, if you've not listened to Lose Episode, please go back and listen to it. It's a fun one. So moving on for this episode. Reason I say this is a big topic is it's an important one. Today we're talking about engaging new players, a skill that I think actually can expand to honestly engaging and building an entire community and an entire organization. We're going to talk about how to do this at your own home table. So that way, if you're not doing a big campaign like us, you can just do it with your personal friends at your kitchen table or at your local game shop. We'll talk about how to do it in a much larger campaign and some ways that you can further incorporate people into your bigger story, and even how to engage people in your ultimate vision. If you want to go big like us with this like massive project experiment, we keep changing words. And of course, we'll also have we'll have a comfortable discussion about some of the uncomfortable things that can come out with that too, because that's an important chat to have. And finally, if you listen all the way through the episode, we also do want to present our first time doing our question of the episode. And anyone who listens to the end and answers that question may have a chance to win a good prize out of it. How's that sound, Shawn?
That sounds great. That's a kind of a great way to start this off. I think engaging new players is a common challenge, and at times can be a barrier to wanting to run games. I think that's one of the first intimidating barriers in being a DM is getting past the social awkwardness that speaking in front of people can kind of bring up and so on and so forth. But then how do you feel like your players are getting out? What are they getting out of your story and what you've put into it?
Precisely. But before we get into that, one last thing to talk about. Shawn, we've got some charity stuff to talk about.
The charity is called Extra Life. It's extralife.org is the website. We as a guild decided that we wanted to support a charity, and we do a 50-50 raffle. It supports Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. In a very specific way, it really helps children in the probably most vulnerable parts of their lives feel normal and have normal experiences that other kids would have. And the monies that are raised through our 50-50 raffle, which is we've raised almost $700 so far, which I'm really proud of as of this episode. But it is something that helps the families, excuse me, and allows it to, it just gives them a sense of normalcy that we may take for granted. We partnered up with a group called Golden Alchemy Crafts, and they've created some dice trays for us based on the houses. which are really cool. And you can go to their website. We'll make sure we have a link for it in the description. And you can purchase these wonderful dice trays, and the proceeds, 10% of the proceeds, go directly to charity. So that's a pretty cool thing. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. They just joined us, so shout out to them.
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. I can't wait for my Spark Ascendant. Uh, I'm spacing on the name of my guild. My Spark Ascendant. My
There it
Sentinel's
is. There it is.
Grace.
Look, 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 right there.
Thank you for
Thank
our
you. Thank
producer for
you.
putting up.
Help him out. Help him out.
I know. I know.
That's funny.
It's because my head's buzzing with all that we have to talk about. But yes, genuinely, and it pops up on screen for those who are listening. Our producer just put up the chapter name. Thanks for the show notes there, Ryan. That's very helpful. So let's go ahead and dive in with our topic. Let's start on the micro scale, and we'll build out to
Right.
the macro. Right. So, Shawn, the people have come to us. They've clicked on this episode. They want to learn about engaging their players from the most basic level. When you're at the table, be it at the table for our game or just at a table in general for D&D, how are you engaging new players?
Well, I try to look at that first opportunity, the little session 0 that you can have as the game goes on, or as the game begins. I look at my players and I try to figure out who's got some experience, who understands the process, who doesn't, and those that don't. I don't say pick on them, but you give them early moments as quickly out of the gate as you can, or at least I can, to get them to roll some dice, feel like they're a part of something, get the flow going, and you don't pick on them in those terms as much as you spotlight them in a good way, to give them an opportunity to do something cool, and then they get into the flow, and then they feel better about their characters, and then the game itself starts to come to them a bit, which I think is cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting tightrope to walk, and I don't know if I walk that tightrope so much as I just blunder on past it, but I do the same thing too, where I love when I get a new shy player at my table, and again, you want to walk that tightrope, but I love not immediately, but very much so finding opportunities where I can put the spot on them, where I can give them a cool moment, where I can have some scary, intimidating creature they're talking to, look them right in the eye, at which point I look them in the eye, point at them and say, what does your character say? Or find ways where I can have some kind of horrible threat or trap spring in a way that it triggers on them without killing them, because right, I don't want them to feel bad, and find opportunities where I can get that player to be in the moment, right, to react as their character would, to think it through, to think creatively, and really feel like they're playing D&D. I think a way I've described it before is, veteran players, and anyone listening to this podcast who is a veteran player knows this, right? Veteran players know how to take the spotlight, right? You've planned your character out. You've got their backstory lined up. You might have min-maxed your build and know exactly how to get optimal damage and do this or blow this up. You know the angle shoots. You know all the cool things you can do to really be a badass in D&D.
Right.
And new players don't have that skill set yet. And I like to use my powers as a DM to not so much, I guess, give them the spotlight in a scary way, but to say, hey, here's your moment. You can be cool right now. And no matter what, I've got your back. Right. And really present that so that way they can then take those cool moments they get and take them home and be excited and remember them and think, wow, that was so cool. I got to talk down the enemy, or I got to land the killing blow, or I got to solve the trap. And then as a result, think, oh, I felt so cool. I want to come back and do that again.
Yeah, one of my tricks that I like to pull out of my bag of tricks, so to speak, is not just, you present the idea and you present the moment, but it's also giving them a way to describe their character and personifying them in a badass way.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they strut in the room, you look, and they, the enemy is, whoa, I didn't know you were that. It's like you just suddenly give them that reflex, and then they've embodied it. You've embodied it a bit for them, and then they're like, oh, you mean yes, you can do that. And then they step through that, and then you have them at that point. And they're like, okay, you're rolling with, because yes, like you said, I will gladly give you the spotlight. I got your back. You can't fumble here. Have fun with
That
it. And that is an opening trick, is to make them fall into that line.
That's such a great point. And I even try and do similar too, where like if I have, oh, I know, like here's one I'll do is if I know I have, say, someone who's new and maybe they're a rogue, right? They picked a rogue for their class. One thing I love to do at the start of any session of our games, especially because we have so many different players, and for those who've been listening know we have different players every single time we play. Some of them have never interacted with each other. Sometimes they're new people. Sometimes they're new to each other, new to me. So one thing I always start every session with is I tell people, you get together as a party, you've been dispatched on this mission together, describe your character to everyone else at the table. And a common thing I like to do when I do this is
Mhm.
one, if a new player describes something that they're proud of or sounds cool because they're passionate about it, I try and jot that down. Right. So they say, they have my
Right,
sword is like made of ebony black and it seems to reflect like the mirror. That was an important detail for them to describe to make them feel cool. So I want to write that down so that later when I describe how they cut through
right,
someone, say, you see the black ebon blades slashing
right,
through. It shows them that I'm engaged with what they're doing. And it
right,
also takes those cool details that they gave me and allows me to then take
right,
what they said was cool and make it now cool to everybody else. Right. It's such a simple little trick. And then if they don't know,
right.
because other times you'll get the people who are like, I don't know, he
Yeah,
wears dark leather armor or something, or they're more shy. I might throw prompts, stuff like, does he have like any scars anywhere,
right.
or when does he seem very trusting? Or I love with a barbarian, if they say he wears normal clothes, I might be like he has a simple shirt, I'll be like, is it unbuttoned down the whole way so that way abs are showing? And I love, you'll get the, oh yeah totally, like, yeah, chest hair all the way down. Like you give them these prompts that they think
Right,
like, oh yeah, that's a good
right, right.
idea. And then right, again, I've got the muscle set to think of this at the gate because I've been playing D&D for 7, 8 years at this point. It's just about giving them those opportunities to then have those moments too.
I totally agree. When you new players, again, they're shy. Everyone's shy when you walk in the door, and we've seen this. A couple of new players, Trask the Barbarian. He came in and he actually played at my table, and I made sure he was close. I said it in previous episodes. Please, the less experienced players, I want them closer to me. One, they'll get more out of it because they're closer. They'll hear me better
Right.
if they flow along better. But it gives me opportunity to read them. Experienced players I know how they're gonna
Yes.
play, I can read them from across the room, easy. The players that are new, I'm learning them as well as they're learning me, and that's a two-way street that we're starting to figure out. I am all about, and I say it out of the gate, I'm a rule of cool DM, that's been my style. If you can come up with a glorious way for doing something, it sounds cool, I'm all for it. Let's incorporate it into the story and make it sound and make it glorious, to the cause, and what I have found is interesting and fun is most of my players don't take advantage of that and do something ridiculous like, "Oh, we're gonna break your game right now." No, most of them will follow the spirit in which I've laid that down, and I think that's fun, and that makes it cool.
And I think that actually piggybacks to a similar point. You brought up earlier how you will do kind of like the mini session zero.
Mhm,
Even that is, it can be a way to engage with players and can all to guide them in ways that they can feel engaged at the table and kind of get an understanding of how things work. We'll
mhm,
talk a little bit later about how you don't want to overload with rules and stuff, but one thing I commonly do whenever we have new players at my table, or even players who just haven't played with me, is I'll specify how I'll give just a kind of overview of how I like to run things as a DM. Like, one thing I always love to say to my players is, please, I encourage you, be as creative as you want. If you have a harebrained scheme, I'll hear all of it. I can't
mhm.
guarantee that it'll work, and I'm gonna run it realistically. So, like, I set that expectation of like, hey, this is D&D, not the Looney Tunes. But it also sometimes for shire players or for maybe players who are afraid they're gonna mess up, afraid they're gonna do something that won't be cool, afraid that they'll be rejected by an idea that I have. Even that small little thing can be just the invitation to say, like, hey, like, I want to hear your input, right? I've got the camera, I'm the DM, but I'm not the only storyteller at this table, right? And you are one of many people that I need to make this world lived in and breathable and engaging, not just for yourself and for me, but for everyone else here at the table.
Absolutely, and one of my favorite things too is to engage players and to bring that level is humor, is fun. Like, if I'm directing this story, if you will, it's a comedy. It's just my nature. I like it to be that way. It keeps it lighthearted, uh, even in the most serious moments. But again, comedy has it's a fine line, and I think we can talk about that at some length, and how, what you find funny and what someone else finds funny are two different things. And D&D in itself kind of breeds the pop culture nerd references, and where we all pull from the movies we've watched and the things that we've really gotten into. That's what makes this game fun, is finding ways to tie in all those little references into your story and make your players feel like they are actually breathing and living. And it's a very fine line, but that's one of my favorite things to do. And I know when I'm having fun, and I know when everyone else is, because we're laughing. And
Right.
that's laughing and rolling dice are two of the best things in the world.
All of these cool things, like these moments, in a way they become like inside jokes, right? They have the same power of an inside joke. It's instead of being like, remember the
Absolutely.
time that you, I don't know, I can't think of, like, you, I don't know, I'm looking at Google Chrome. Hey man, Google Chrome, right? That's an inside joke, and we know because it has some reference to Google Chrome, because Nathan looked at his desktop as we recorded this, and all he could think was Google Chrome, right? But that moment
Yeah.
can be the same thing as a, like, hey dude, watch out, the giant slayer walked in, because that player, new or old, got the kill on the
Right.
giant.
It, well, it just becomes this, like the dwarf who for notoriously falls in every pit trap becomes the running joke later, with his buddies hanging out to play together, and he'll be like, and he'll try to do something that's like, "Is there a pit trap involved? You might want to stay away from that." The commonalities, the things that you fail at regularly, because the game will do that to you. That's what makes it kind of fun, is that you will get to a streak where whatever doors become your problem, and you
and it's
can't
the
get past
and
them.
it's those moments too that get players coming back, right? It's those moments that get players not just engaged for the moment, engaged for the game, but then engaged to come back. In our case, month to month. In yours, it might be month to month, might be week to week, right? It's these moments that have them further feeling connected to, not just like I'm sitting around a table and I'm playing a one-time session with my friends. But now, right, you start to take that extra step into, this is where you're
Exactly.
building more of not just the one shot, but more campaign style of play. A common thing we do to help build that is, this is where we have the well, our producer Ryan is really the pioneer of it, but we have our epilogues we'll do, where we give players opportunities to, with some limits, again, I think we'll talk about a little bit later, but to suggest, or to, through some of the ideas and decisions and story points that they help create, inspire us to write shorter epilogues that we might do either at the end of a session to kind of cap off the adventure they just did, almost cutscene style, or even to do the next month before they start playing. Something they can look forward to after they've had time to mull things over and maybe message us a little bit.
In the way this is kind of structured and laid out, and we talked about it in previous episodes, that the tent poles of this are kind of loose, because we're waiting for the players to experience and create new threads and create new things. Now, and with that happening, there will be unresolved issues. There'll be things that almost took off, but then could be explored later. Epilogues do that, and I think Ryan's, when he came up with the concept, I think it's fabulous. The few that we've run, players get excited to do them. It does give you a little bit more, kind of, to me, it's a nice hybrid of player driven narratives and
Very much so.
DM driven narratives. I think this is a nice hybrid between the two, because then players feel like, ooh, if I have something that I need unresolved, or that's unresolved, that I would like to explore a little bit, and I can do it in a small session. I've had in my home game, here's a great example. I've done what I like to call the little mini one shots, where each player, and now granted, I only have 4 in my home game, so it's a little easier. 6 would be difficult, but you give each one of them a small 5-6 minute one shot that's solely related to them and what they're dealing with. And in this case, it worked out because the party was scattered across Faerun at the end of the last session, and it was what they each one of them experienced coming back from that scattering. So it was a fun little story mechanism, but that's the mentality, or the idea behind it, is that you can give each player his own little spot, and grab them for a bit and take them on a little journey that is small enough but entertaining enough that they get something out of it, and again further deepens the level of immersion, levels the connection to the game and connection to the players. And sometimes the other players really enjoy watching that, I think, seeing, because they know their turn's coming up.
Yeah, I know Ryan's had a couple people like crowd around his table because they come early, so that way they can do the epilogues. And the epilogues are also cool because they actually act as a way to respond to regular listeners at this point will have heard us talk about the dispatches we have. So for those who haven't heard before, one thing we encourage players to do, and to the point where we incentivize it sometimes with magic items, is we encourage them to, similar to how some West Marches campaigns may do, we asked them to write a dispatch or basically a report on the session they did, right? Because they're participating in the Vanguard, in the guild, the Vanguard. That's the whole point of the Vanguard D&D that we do. And so when they come back from that session, they'll write a report, which they'll send back to the guild elders, us. And it also serves as a player written synopsis of the sessions, which even in home games, whenever I can with my old campaign, I loved at the start of the next session asking my players to do a recap, because it was a way to help me understand what was important to them, what were the details they held on to, what story threads they thought they interpreted accurate at the time, inaccurate at the time, maybe inaccurate and now accurate because I thought it was a way better idea later, right? It's another way to further engage, and all this feeds into making the players continue to feel like they have a place in the world you're building. And anytime you can get people to feel like, with be it with D&D or I don't know, a board game group, a regular board game group, or a social club or sports team or any volunteer organization, anytime you can get people to feel like their time is worth something. Not even just in terms of, oh, I went, I did the thing, I had fun. But I went, I did the thing, I had fun, and my presence there also contributed to other people having fun, and those people want me back. That is so valuable for keeping people coming back to whatever you're doing. And not just that, but growing even more passionate about it too. And if I actually, real quick, I'll do a quick plug. If anyone's curious about what we mean by some of these dispatches or some of these epilogues, they're actually all up on our wiki. For those who are, again, are new, we have a Wikipedia page where we post synopses of all of these. Players will give details on all of their characters, all kinds of information that you can use to keep track of our campaign in real time as we update it. That's at vanguardguild.fandom.com. Totally go check it out. There's a lot of our players put a lot of passion into some of the writing they have there, which again is a testament to just the amount of creativity and engagement we have with this group of people we've been lucky enough to get together.
Absolutely. One of the fun things about this is how we did it. It was very organic. It grew out of, hey, let's start this. It starts from the top down. If we want this to happen, we have to put it out there. We have to start making it common for us to report from our perspective, getting them to report from their perspective. And it started to go back and forth, giving away magic items and potions, things and buffs, things that would help them in their adventures. Always helps. It makes people a lot more likely to do it, and it did. And those dispatches, again, like you said, help us refine the game, help us find out the strength in it. Where what can we make better? What worked? What didn't work? All those extra things when it comes to DMing and engaging players. It starts with your story, but and yeah, we can get into that whole idea. I was just thinking about this. Uh, the stories we talk about, and each one of us have a different one and a different, unique one we write uh, every month. And what inspires us, I think personally, what makes this work is that our stories are very human. That we look into the more emotional side of
Right.
this conflict we've created, and our stories are driven from that. And I think that's engaging the players. You don't just talk about things; you talk about feelings and emotions that are tied to those things, and then engage them that way. And people jump. I think they get more on board. That's just my personal opinion, but I do think it works.
And actually, you reminded me of something else, although probably for not the reasons you intended. But speaking of also emotions being tied to things or things
Never.
being tied to emotions, obviously not everyone can do this, but we brought up before how we actually also have like physical things we give out to our players. Not everyone has to do this, and your mileage, your financial availability, your creative ability, your drawing ability, any of these might hamper you in some way. But Shawn I'll never forget, Shawn, the first time you showed. So we organized the Vanguard into houses, as was shown up on the screen earlier, because I blanked on the name of House Sentinel's Grace, which is literally my house. or we have the House Ironwall, which Shawn leads, or the Arcana Profound, or the Wild Watch. The idea is in our campaign, and again, you may do yours however you want. Although we have the guild, our guild is split into houses, Hogwarts style. And Shawn came up with the idea that when players have, specifically when they hit level 4, because they started level 3, correct?
Start at level 3, and when they hit level 4, it's effectively after 3 sessions. We call them initiate trials. You become a member and you're accepted into a house, and that house comes with a pin, a metallic pin that I had made based on the house logos, and the response I got from them was great. And then I even added a certificate signed by the house master, the chapter master, and has a wax seal with the same logo. I think, again, I'm a bit of a props DM. I love that level of immersion, handing things out, having physical, tangible things that the players can hold on to. It takes it from just a theater of the mind and transfers it a little bit deeper, I think. So that was kind of part of it. And then I mentioned it again in previous episodes, that it was a bit of guerrilla marketing too, just to get
Right.
it out there,
And even if you don't have money for like enamel pins or a wax seal, I mean, simply if you have computer paper or if you can go to your local library just to print out, even if they're black and white, just these physical
Right.
objects. You could do printable cards. You could hand draw
Yeah.
something if your handwriting's good enough, or get a friend to do it. Everyone has at least one friend with half decent handwriting. All of these things, even that breaking of the fourth wall, actually kind of seriously, it makes the experience more real, and again forms that connection, right? It takes it from being
Right.
just like, oh yeah, we sit around and we read some numbers and we roll some dice, to like, oh, this is like a cool thing.
Well, yeah, when you think about it too, as a player or even as a member, when I look at these pins, I'm instantly reminded of the time, and I'm instantly taken to our sessions, and I'm instantly brought back to that moment when a cool thing happened, or I laughed about that, or it was just, I mean, the holiday questival. There's so many great memories that I already have in the last year that we've been doing this that I think other people share too, and whether it's they show up at our events, and you are definitely going to walk away with something, and a memory at minimum, but maybe you could win a door prize, or you could easily, maybe win the 50-50. But if you hit your 4th level, you get your pin. You've now initiated into a house, and I think that's cool.
Very much is. So now these are I think some of the more, this is definitely on the more micro end, and campaign kind of is in between. Now let's switch to bigger scale, right?
Right.
Let's talk more on the macro side of things. Let's talk about, for those people who, well, actually, I hope this applies to everyone in some way, but let's pull more from our experience in organizing the Vanguard specifically. Organizing this, again, just to repeat, it is every single month. We have currently six active DMs, because we're looking to grow more.
6 hectares. So we like to. I think we're going to start calling them narrative DMs, because we have narrative DMs and now we
Yeah,
have a
so
combat DM. So that can easily be put into the narrative DMs, the
yeah,
campaign
certainly I was even
DMs,
going to
if
say
you will.
six regular DMs, but yeah, the point is we've got like one. If we've got six, let's call them moderator DMs because they have the higher privileges in the Discord, right?
Hey, well, how about this? Someone put in the comments. Let's get a name from somebody in the comments. If you want to call us, I don't know what we're going to call us. We don't know. As you
Still
can tell, we're
spitballing.
just floundering here. Why don't we get? Yeah, we're just still spitballing. So it's fun to you get to see the behind the
Yeah,
scenes, because this is a lot of how it works. Is that we spitball until we go, that's really good. And so in the comments, if you can come up with a name for the, I would love to see what you would call us,
yeah,
and
please
please
do.
be kind.
But that's a great setup, right? We've got six different people who have been doing like kind of the regular narrative story for our DMing. We have a couple temporary DMs who have come on to substitute, and now actually we just started a project for when since we hit capacity with our number of players. As we've expressed before, we have a ticketing system through which people are able to sign up for and basically reserve their spot, because we run with 6 DMs running 6 people each. That's only 36 players. And we frequently have more people who want to come and hang out or participate in some way. So now we have an arena we're opening up in which players will be able to do, I think we're shooting for 1 hour combat sessions to potentially get XP items or other prizes. So we're obviously growing a lot, and this takes a lot of effort. And that's why I think one of the first things to say is if you want to grow any kind of organization or community you're building, you're going to be wearing a lot of hats. And one of the first and most basic ones is I people have heard me say in 7 episodes 1,000 times how I used to run my own club in college. You might say organizer. I think club president because really it just kind of feels the same to me in terms of some of the discussions that we have. But it is that the point is you are taking a leadership role. And it's ironic because we're talking about D&D. I'll never forget when I first got into D&D. It's after I read a Kotaku article that said, if you want to play D&D, you're pretty much going to have to do all the work yourself. Because in that same way of being a DM of writing or reading the story, inviting all your friends over, coordinating, knowing the rules, like it's kind of similar. That's kind of a microcosm of what you may have to do to organize this kind of game.
Yeah, this style, and again, we one of our pillars, and we continue to push on it, and we will continue to push on it, is a community. We want to build a community first, and part of to get back a little bit to the arena, which was a wonderful idea by our producer Ryan. He came up with it. His level of excitement in this, I cannot tell you. I can't express how excited he was to tell me this. He was he was bouncing off the walls. He was so excited about this idea that he wanted to share. And the battle arena is great. It's short combat for people who want to just try the dice roll and get a feel for what it's like, without having to worry so much about the narrative. But it is also there as a way to bring more people into the event, thus helping the charity even more. Because a lot of this, we have drink specials, we have food specials, we have the 50-50 raffle, things that we are doing at the event to continue to raise money for the charity. So the more people, at first they were general audience and there wasn't much for them to do. We've incorporated more and more things. One of the new things, we'll have movies playing, just so you're not just staring at the walls. You can actually come in and engage with us, meet us if you're just part of the general audience, and then get your slot for the battle arena, which should be fun. I'm excited to see how that plays out. And Ryan has done a really good job connecting it to the narrative at the was it Blackstone Battle Arena? I think it's
That's
Battlegrounds and Arena. That's what we're called.
yeah, that's there it is. He's confirming with both of us. I was like, wait a minute, no, now I've lost it too.
I know. Did I say that right? Did I say yeah, Blackstone Battlegrounds and
And
Arena.
actually, Ryan, another of our regulars in the creative process DMs will come up with a name from the comments later. But he's another great example of one of the hats that God he has taken that hat and just run with it, which is like he's our main marketing and recruitment guy.
I was gonna make a point when you were like, "One of the first things you need to get," and in my head, I went,
Yeah,
"Is
you need a
Ryan."
Ryan.
You need a Ryan is what you need. Someone he is highly organized. We're gonna give him all right, here's a super plug, all right? I'm just gonna do it because you can use this for your resume, when you try and get another producing job. Is that, he's highly organized, he's very motivated, but in a good way, and everything he's done is always is done nothing but moved us forward and allowed us to step up and not only be a stronger presence to our community that shows the kind of culture that we want around and the standards that we set around us to make it fun and enjoyable and raise money for the charity. I think that's kudos to you, Ryan. I'm telling you, and I've said it to your face, and I'll say it here on the podcast. We could not have done this or even got to this point without you.
And for anyone who doesn't have a Ryan though, as funny as that is, like legitimately, you'll have to be doing that yourself, at least initially, in order to
Yeah, yeah,
grow and build
right.
that community. I mean, Shawn, literally, that's what you were doing. It was it was your coordinating with Sonora, our first home. Now that we've actually moved to a new location,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I first picked up, and it was you taking that initiative that was the reason that I came along, right? And then it was your drive that further helped us get more people on board, and then slowly all of
Right.
us as the main DMs have had to keep growing and putting our best foot forward in order to build this community in more ways than one.
Absolutely. The building a community, it's hard to do, and because it could have gone south, we know that. And I think we have hard discussions with each other, and we're honest with each other, and it creates a level of transparency to our players and to our members that we're here to make it fun. And we're just a bunch of people. We love this game and we got involved because we enjoy it, and it now became such a fun way to, like I said, to help other people. Like I think it's a win-win for everybody when I really think about how we did this and how we continue to let this grow and build because of our maintaining a standard of what we expect from our players and what's fun, you know?
Yeah, like you're not just an organizer or a club president. You're not just doing recruitment or marketing, but in another way, you're shit. If you have a Discord, you got to be a moderator. If you don't have that on your team,
Yeah.
you need that. But in other ways, you're having to be a role model. You know, you this is a corny line, but it's so true. You know, you have to embody whatever you're trying to build is. You have to embody and be the culture that you want to see in your group, community, club, organization, campaign, experiment, whatever you want to call it. You have to embody that, right? You have to be,
You're responsible.
yeah, very much so. You know, as your community grows, and we'll kind of talk about this a little bit later too, but you know, as your community grows and you build, it'll get easier and you'll have more people who are there to aid and assist and help you and have your back. But you know, at the very least, initially, you know, God forbid you have any kind of issues or any kind of challenges, but you're the one who has to be on the lookout for gatekeeping, excuse me, right? You're the one who has to be the first person to speak up for offensive, problematic, or otherwise inappropriate behavior, right? Because people are going to look to you to set the standard of the community that you are building. You're the first point of contact for anyone on all of this stuff. And you know, it's funny, we were talking about before the show on our like kind of pre when we're going through notes. Shawn, I wrote this down because I thought it was an interesting. You said it best when you said, if anyone gives you issues, the thing to remember is we're doing the best to give you the best experience, and we want people to work with us so that we can continue to make this the greatest it can be. So this is the standard we expect, and I find that to just be such a perfectly condensed sentiment for how you have to be able to have some of these challenging conversations.
100%. You can't just expect the world to or expect your players or expect your society, the culture, the community you bring to just follow along and some unwritten set of rules that you didn't tell them about. You have to express those. You have to be able to show people what you expect and embody that completely and
Oh my god, yeah. And even like on a more positive direction of that, I used to, so for the like third time this episode, I used to run a club in college, but I think I used to always tell my members. So there were numerous nerd clubs on campus back in the day,
right.
and I hate that I just said back in the day. That I hate
Because
that.
I'm the older one here. When he says back in the day, I was still old.
Like circa dangerously close to 10 years ago.
Oh,
But there were a lot of there were a lot of other nerd organizations on my campus, and not all of them. I don't want to be dragging up old stuff, but some of them got really like territorial.
yeah.
Like they did not like us being on because they felt that we were taking members from them. And in fact, and I know this because I had their members literally say, "So you're the one who's stealing our members," numerous times. It was a whole thing. But whenever I examined and I looked at it, and whenever I talked to my officers about it, and I kind of looked at why, I noticed, yeah, we were like fast growing and gaining more people. And in spite of them having been around longer, their numbers were kind of staying stagnant the whole time. And I realized, and I pushed to a lot of my officers and I tried to embody, I told them, I said, you know, the difference is they're an organization who leaves the door open and they say, why aren't we getting more people? I wanted us to be an organization. And I think anyone who wants to grow, again, any kind of community, and it doesn't even have to be nerd related, it's not enough to leave the door open. You need to invite people through, right? It's not enough to using literally if you're thinking like on a campus setting, right? It's not enough to just have the door open and your club time's up on the website. And you know, if someone comes by, maybe if they're desperate enough, they'll see like, oh well, you know, I like video games, or oh, I like D&D, or I like anime, and maybe I'll come check it out, right? Half of them are too shy to come in, right? If you want them to come in, what you do is you see them walking by, you see them maybe kind of like poke ahead and say like, "Hey, come on in!" Like, "Hey, welcome, welcome! Oh my god!" Like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I'm scary to shy people. You know what I mean? Like, "Oh my god!" I'd tell me like, "What's your favorite game? Oh my god, what's your favorite class? Oh, what are you playing right now? Oh, how are class going?" Like, oh, like you engage them immediately and make that connection. You know,
Yeah,
it's more the more positive side of what we were talking about earlier.
it takes, a certain personality type to be, that extroverted. I think Ryan talked about it in our last episode in Lose Dice, the episode 6, that that moment where you're like, should I go? Do I want to go? What is this going to be? S- Everyone who has done that has taken that leap and come as an individual. Trask was an example I said earlier, leaves feeling that they had a really good time, and I think it's our job to make sure that the barrier of oh, I'm going to be embarrassed, it's out of the way. I'll do something silly on purpose. I will draw the attention to myself so it doesn't feel like, don't worry, you're not going to be the goofiest person in the
Right.
room. You're fine. I've
I'll
set
do
the
voices
groundwork.
too.
It's
Don't
okay.
worry.
I'm perfect. Yeah, right. I'll do the voices, and on purpose, because try to put them at ease. And I do think when people come to the game for the first time, a lot of them, especially now, are watching it on YouTube or watching it on online somewhere, Twitch or some other streaming service, to watch people play live D&D to get a feel for, like, well, how's the game being played? And a lot of the people they're watching are trained actors or voice actors or
Right.
trained professionals. It's not that. And then they come thinking, oh my God, I have to be all
Totally.
this. No, you don't. And I think that's unfair to get a misinterpretation, but I also think it's our jobs to almost lay that out, so it's like, no, you don't have to be that good because I'm a terrible actor, but I'll have fun doing it.
I
And
mean,
that's
even
they
us,
get
like,
that, you know what I
listen,
mean?
as much as we're like super excited to be recording a podcast about our D&D experience, as happy as we are that we like regularly have over 50 people showing up, some of which who can't play and we're looking to grow, like, and we've been doing this for a year and we've been playing D&D longer, and we've been, as you heard by the fact that we literally put out a comment call for what to even call ourselves in some contexts, like all of this stuff is a slow process. You might just be starting with just the table thing, and you might not have a vision of getting to this kind of much loftier, larger thing. You might not be shooting to ever be a critical role or to do a live stream or any of these things. At whatever it is, building a
Right.
culture of any kind, if you decide to go for it to the distance or not, it's a slow process. And honestly, it needs
It
to be.
has to
Yeah, it
be.
very much needs to be. I mean, like the initial focus should always be on getting people who are engaged, happy, and passionate to contribute to the environment that you're building. That should be the focus. And we're talking about engaging new players, but I think that word engaging is really important. It's not about recruiting. This isn't an episode about recruiting. Like, okay, how do you advertise and market? That's a part of building a community. But, if you focus too much early on the pure quantity of people that you're bringing into your organization, you risk negatively impacting the culture of that organization or group, whatever have you. And that's, well, honestly, I think that's a decent transition to talk about some of the more uncomfortable conversations that you may need to have to protect that.
Yeah, you have to see especially in our environment. I think it's important for all of the 5 or 6 of us, the consistent DMs and the ones that are really organizing this, to look at a bigger picture and to make sure that we are holding ourselves to that standard, and as well as standing up and speaking out anyone who violates that standard, even in what may come off, what was intended and not being egregious, but ends up being that way. And you want to make sure people are okay with that. It's like, listen, I'm going to tell you if you're doing something that's out of line, and if you get too out of line, you're going to be asked to leave. And I'm not afraid to do that. We have to protect the culture as much as we have to nurture it.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, like, listen, we're not here sitting and saying that, like, watch out, you're going to have jerks that come in and want to ruin things. That can happen. But even sometimes, like, look, man, I speak as one of them. Nerds are weird sometimes and socially awkward. And you know why? Because nerd culture is a space that accepts everyone, and that is the thing that makes it beautiful and wonderful, amazing. But that also means that sometimes people stumble and they don't know how to act because they haven't had the practice in that, and that's okay. Like, this is a safe space for that. But it creates, Jesus, you're playing D&D, it creates things where, like, you get drinking, drugs, and want to hit the brothel and charisma check the barmaid, and, like,
All right.
depending on your table, that could be okay. Know the players, they might not be paying attention to the fact that you might have kids sitting at the next table over, or minors in some regard, and like, that's not like, that's not cool, dude. Like, can we, hey, that, that's, okay, ha ha ha, the joke's funny. Can we keep moving on? Because like, I don't want to linger in that moment, and you're taking the spotlight in a bad way,
There's a couple of times in our games and where more adult level behavior might be engaged, and I'm a believer of consequence too, and I'm fine with it. Uh, if I felt like something would become a problem, then I would take that player aside and tell them, like, depending on what table you're playing at, have a little court awareness.
Yeah,
Look, if there's a kid under 18 at your table, you might want to tone some of that down. And I don't want to discourage your creativity, but at the same time, I want you to temper it with a little of appropriate behavior. We are in a public space.
precisely. I mean, like, even shoot, I'll sometimes, especially because usually they're doing it to try and get a joke or whatever, and I find typically for me, like, two simple ways when you get that kind of inappropriate behavior. It's either I make a joke that's funnier just to distract from it and then move on, so the spotlight doesn't stay on them. Kind of like an old like, if you've ever been a musician or into like stage play or anything, if a mistake is made, you keep rolling, right? Just keep the show going so we don't linger in it.
Yeah.
Or another one that honestly
Right.
works is, if the joke's not funny, you just keep moving without acknowledging or laughing at it, and you just kind of let them sit in it for a moment. And oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes they get the hint of like, maybe I take a break and workshop these a little bit longer.
Yeah, yeah. The my stand-up routine needs a little polishing. No, I agree. But it's also that's another my other fun way too is if it's really borderline, one of the things I'll do is have them explain it to me. And that'll diffuse
Yeah,
any
that's
joke
that's
in about 30
that's a
seconds.
meaner
I don't
technique.
understand what you mean.
That's a meaner technique, but it does work too. And this can, like, we're talking
What?
we're talking like the inappropriate, the uncomfortable, and like the inappropriate, and like, come on, dude. But this can even be in
Right,
softer stuff too. Like, rules lowering is a great example. And I've had
right.
rules lowering in a couple different ways. Like, sometimes I've sometimes been lucky enough to have players who will correct me on a rule, or like, I'll say, oh, let me look this up, and they're like, oh, actually, it's I almost did the glasses push up too, but like, oh, actually, it's this, and then
Huh?
yeah, and then they're cool enough to say, hey, let me know if I'm overstepping, which, like, beautiful. I love those players. But then other times I have the ones who, I have a new player and I'm trying to teach them the rules to the game, and it's their first time sitting down at the table. I'm trying to get them engaged. I'm trying to get them rolling. And I'm not going to explain combat, because we're not going to get to combat for an hour. And I don't have an hour. It doesn't take me that long, but I don't have an hour to explain combat. But I'll have some person who's like, okay, and then when combat starts, you do, and I'm like, don't worry about that. Like, hey, buddy, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I see your passion. I
Yeah,
recognize it, but you're not like, hey, let me, I got it. Don't worry. I got it. Trust me. You keep it light and you keep it humorous, and
right,
you
right.
try and do this to again make the culture, you almost like you're replacing the negative moments with positive ones immediately. So that way those positive moments are what
Exactly.
stay around a lot longer. And again, help to not just build the culture, but the atmosphere that then nurtures that culture.
There's an interesting correlation, I believe, between memories and emotion, in that you memories that are tied to bad emotions linger, but memories tied to good emotions do the same thing. And
Right.
if you focus on that and understanding that you're creating a positive, fun moment and an emotion that's up in terms, and everybody's in a fun sense of it, and even when it borderlines inappropriate, it can, there's always gray area in there because you don't know is what other people find offensive or not offensive. We have the obvious ones, but the when you're telling a joke or you're trying to make your player do something, your character do something interesting, and it borderlines, ooh, that's touchy, and then you watch the person you thought would be offensive laugh even louder, then you're like, okay, maybe it's a constant reading of the room as a DM, and for new DMs out there, it's not difficult. You just have to learn to pick up on certain cues, and you can see those cues a mile away sometimes once you start to become aware of them.
Yeah.
You know,
And like, we have been so lucky, like, legitimately, like, we've had a couple, minor awkward things here, but I really don't think we've had anything like dramatically bad. But even to that point, I almost said the phrase, we know it's coming one day. That's actually the very wrong way to take it. We know that those things can be a possibility. And that's why we as DMs have had this discussion. We know the culture we want. And again, luckily, our community has been beautiful, flawless in any way, in every way.
yeah, They really have.
But we have built this community in such a way that if someone does something that, let's be clear, I'll phrase it this way, that makes other people genuinely uncomfortable, genuinely unhappy, genuinely not feel like they are welcome in the space we are creating. Shawn, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think every single one of our DMs feels empowered to say, hey, that is not welcome here. And if you continue to, or
Exactly.
depending on the offense, you've demonstrated already, you are not welcome here. And that's a big talk I get to say as after having said literally we've not had to do that yet because we've been lucky. But I say this with all sincerity that like this culture is valuable not just to me but to literally dozens of other people and hopefully more. And I feel both a responsibility and a pride in that in the my dedication to enabling and keeping that. So I have no issue saying, hey, that is not welcome here.
100%. One of the things too that I think is so important in building this community and engaging this community is our mission is community first. Everything kind of after that is it kind of builds itself around making sure our community is serviced in a way that they feel comfortable, they feel included, they feel a part of something more than themselves. And that alone tends to weed out, I want to use the term troublemakers, or the people that aren't really there to have fun. They're there to just stir it up. And that we're right, we have been blessed that we have not had to have that happen. And I think that but knowing that it can, and knowing that we're empowered to say no, and to say this is not acceptable, you have to go, is paramount to making sure that we protect what we've built, and keep it open and inclusive, because it's hard to do. It is a little bit of a tightrope, I will say.
It is, but I mean, for me at least, it's been incredibly worth it. And honestly, I really hope I'd love to get some feedback from it on this episode. But God, Shawn, we had so much to talk about. We may have to revisit this topic later. I even like kind of peek behind the curtain. We have show notes of like things that we're like, oh, we want to hit these points. I don't even know if we hit even half of them.
Yeah.
But if anyone at all is able to find some kind of inspiration or guidance or I don't know, go ahead or okay or sign from any of this we've talked about, please take it and run with it because it is through this level of community building that I don't know well I hate to sound so cheesy here, but like build a much more like inclusive and I don't know just wholesome and exciting place, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's so much fun. It is difficult, but at the same time, it's incredibly rewarding when your players, come up to you and tell you they had such a great time, and they talk about it later. And when we watch the Discord blow up the day after an event, and all the communication of all the things that happened, it's such a rush. I totally agree, and I'm glad we're on this ride. I'm really amazed that we're where we are, but I'm very happy in the same way.
Dude, same. So
Yeah.
uh moving forward, unfortunately we do need to wrap this episode. So for anyone who is listening, next episode we're going to talk a little bit more about not just some of the stories we've done, but how you hopefully can be inspired by some of our stories, in particular through a very specific type of antagonist that we've used to great effect. Next week, I need to work on my rhyming. Well, Jesus, next thing I need to work on speaking. Next week, I need to work on my
Next
yeah.
month.
Next in the next 2 weeks, Lordie, I need to work on my rhyming and my speaking clearly because we're going to be talking about hags. uh, if you've enjoyed what you've been listening to, if you've had a good time, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. In particular, for commenting, we do have a question of the episode, which we like to make a regular thing we do here. And the question for this episode is going to be for us, for your fellow DMs, for people who are again listening to this, hoping to start any other kind of community. Please comment on the YouTube channel. How do you engage players or members of your community at the games or spaces that you occupy, at your tables, at your clubs? How do you get people involved? How do you get people engaged? And how do you make it your whatever you're presenting something they want to come back to? I can't wait to read some of the answers. And Shawn, they can win a prize, right?
Yes, we have a very nice ceramic shot glass with a D20 on the front of it that we will give to the first commenter who will engage us in the question. We've been talking about engagement. There it is. The first comment in the continental US and in Canada, because we are a small organization and shipping could be difficult. But yes, in United States, North America, United States and Canada, first question, first comment, you will we will send you a ceramic D20 shot glass.
Awesome. Everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Vanguard Chronicles. Shawn, I've had a blast. I hope you have too.
Yeah, it's been a good one.
And we will see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching the Vanguard Chronicles podcast. If you want to read more about the adventures of our players and our ongoing campaign, or even read some of their dispatches, you can find them at vanguardguild.fandom.com. If you want to support our charity with Extra Life, you can go to their website and search for the Vanguard. And of course, if you want to support us directly, you know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, and answer that question of the week. Thank you again for listening to the Vanguard Chronicles, and we'll see you on the next one.